for those students. And then I'll try to answer your queries. Let it be more interactive, and let us go into more Q&A mode, and I can take your questions on the markets, and we can move on. So to start with, when I was mentioning the basics about the capital market, the basic purpose of capital market, I think we should all understand what is the basic purpose of the capital market. To most of us, the basic purpose of capital market, or the way we look at it is a place to make money, or probably it's a place to lose money, speculate and lose money. Some of us look at it as a gambler's den. Some of us look at it as like an addiction, and some of us look at it as a place where you can create a fortune, you can build wealth. What is the fact? The fact of the matter is that the stock markets or the capital markets, or the basic purpose is not for the traders or investors or anybody to build wealth. The basic purpose of a capital market or a stock market is to it's a capital formation. Capital formation is a very important role of a capital market, particularly in an era of industrialization, when somebody wants to start a company or factory or an industry, and they want capital. They're looking out for capital, and this is a place to generate that kind of a capital from the investors. That's a basic purpose of a capital market. But then, having generated the capital, now there should be a liquidity. There should be an element of liquidity when somebody who has invested wants to get out of it. He needs money. There should be a scientific way, a proper price discovery should happen to sell the shares. And that's where the stock markets come in and the stock exchanges come in. Stock exchanges are the place where, how does it function? The stock exchanges are nothing but a typical matching engines. They are all matching engines, that's all. In simple terms, they are matchmakers. There are a set of buyers, there are a set of sellers, and the buyer has got a certain requirement of prices, and seller wants it at a particular price, and the matchmaking happens when they meet in such a place, when their aims meet, when their rates meet. So that's the basic purpose of a stock exchange, which helps in a more organized way of price discovery for the stocks, for the shares held by us. Now, who are all the stakeholders in this? There are companies who want to generate fund. There are investors who want to help those companies and make some money out of it by investing in them. Then there are regulators. Okay. So if you look at it, there are participants, market participants, who are investors, traders, jobbers. Then the next set is intermediaries, who can be stockbrokers or mutual fund distributors, and these are the people who are intermediaries. And the third layer is self-regulatory organizations, or the stock exchanges, depositories, who are called market infrastructure institutions, MIIs. So these market infrastructure institutions play a very important role. Now, all these three, they are regulated by a regulator who sits on top of them, which is the Securities Exchange Board of India, SEBI. This is the basic structure of a broader structure of the stock markets in India or wherever you go. Now, how they are regulated? They are regulated by, every stock exchange has got a rules and bylaws and regulations. That's one set of regulation. Depositories have a set of regulation. Then there is a SCRA Act, Securities Contract Regulation Act. That act regulates. Companies Act 2013 regulates. It's also governed by SEBI Act, Securities Exchange Board of India Act, Depositories Act. To some extent, when it comes to currency trading and NRIs and FIIs and all those things, RBI and FEMA, these acts come into place. So these are the broader regulations which cover and regulate the capital market. Now, what kind of opportunities are there? In fact, this morning I was delivering a small lecture in another place in college in Coimbatore, school in Coimbatore. I was talking about the career opportunities. If you look at the career opportunity, there are two types of opportunities. One is employment. Another one is, if you're an entrepreneur or you want to do something on your own, that's also possible. If you're looking at employment, then there are various layers which I mentioned. There are tremendous opportunities in stock exchanges, in a stockbroker's office. in as a intermediary, and in those offices you can you can handle the front office or the back office, accounts, delivery, trading. You can be a dealer, you can be a risk manager. So there are various layers, various levels of opportunities available in capital market, in stock brokers office, in stock exchanges, in depositories, in depository participants, registrar and share transfer agents. There are many of them. Then mutual funds. There are about 40 plus mutual fund AMCs are there, asset management companies. There are a lot of opportunities to become a research analyst or a fund manager or a person who takes care of the marketing or technology, all those things. Then you have as a regulator, you can also become a part of the regulator. Regulator needs lawyers, advocates, or chartered accountants or people from the finance world. They need a lot of people. So tremendous career opportunities are there in capital market, because from a 200 crore per day volume in about 25 years back or 30 years back, today our volume of turnover is somewhere around 25,000 crores, 30,000 crores a day, the average daily turnover, which is not 10 times, which is not 100 times, which is about 150 times or 200 times of what it was 25 years back. And all this happens with 2.5 to 3% of the Indian population participating in the market. Now look at a scenario, it doubles in the next 5 to 10 years, which I see happening because of less and less opportunities to invest in other investable products. The traditional investment products for a typical households are becoming low yield products. The fixed deposits, which is much fancied by an average Indian investor, now it is giving a much lower yield, to an extent that it is even lower than the inflation, CPI, the consumer price index, which means that the real rate of return is negative. You're depositing the money in the bank and you're getting a return of 5 rupees or 5.5 rupees, whereas the inflation is 6 rupees. So in net to net, the real rate of return could be negative. So people are looking avenues outside the fixed deposit, the traditional fixed deposit, because they fear that there is a danger of outliving the savings. Because of the longevity, due to medical advancement we live longer and we need more money. Okay. The other options available, like for example the bullion, of course it's performing very well for the last 1 year, but it never generates the income. It generates a capital appreciation. It's a wealth builder, but never a return generator. So there is another problem. The typical investment of middle class used to invest is real estate. Last 10 years has clearly proved that the real estate investment has not given them much of a yield. Not even the yield which a bank fixed deposit or gold gives. So to that extent, now people are averse to investing in second or additional investment property. So when people have surplus, they have started slowly looking at capital market. But people who are scared about capital market, who don't come to the capital market directly because of the risk apprehension in their mind, they go to mutual funds, thinking that mutual funds are a little less riskier. Of course, to some extent, it may be a fact that mutual funds are less riskier because it is managed by the experienced people and people with a lot of knowledge. But then, in no way it is, completely free from risk. It is also riskier. It is riskier than many other products. So I would say that moderately high risk. So, but people have started looking at mutual fund as a very big investment, to an extent that 10 years back, whatever was the annual collection, today that's the collection a month. And on an average, 6,000 to 7,000 crores a month gets into SIP mode into mutual funds. So people are pumping in a lot of money into the mutual funds. So more and more money comes, more and more career opportunities come. So one is the employment side. The other side is that you can become an entrepreneur, you can become a business owner by becoming a registered investment advisor. You can be a financial planner, or you can be a registered investment advisor, retirement planner, or you can be a research analyst and prepare reports and sell it as an independent research analyst. You can be an authorized person or a sub-broker of a big broker, and you can run your own firm in a small way. You can be a mutual fund distributor or an insurance agent or related products. You can provide 360-degree service and take care of the investor. So you can run your own organization, and more need for that is also coming in the days going forward, because people realize that on one side the inflation is hurting them, the other side the returns are coming down, and simultaneously the new needs are going up. We never thought we'll be buying mask and hand sanitizer. Now we have to buy. So the new needs are coming. So expenses are going up, returns are coming down, inflation is high. So in this situation, they have to look. They cannot stick to only fixed deposits, and they can only or gold or real estate. So they have to look out for other avenues. And that way, the capital market plays an important role. And this 2.5% or 3% will become 6 to 7% in the next 5 years. Who knows? Maybe 10% or 15% in the next 10 years. I look at that kind of a phenomenal growth, 100% to 200% growth in the next 10 years. So that kind of a growth is possible, and it is happening. If you look at asset management companies, they're all doing very well. So that is one way the youngsters or the people can look at as a. Now coming to this as an investor. As an investor, what can we do? Now as an investor, when you look at it, I mean, I was talking about it from the point of view of the career opportunities. To take up a career as an employer or employee or become an employer. Or the third option could be that you can become a trader, you can become an investor, you can become a day trader or a job. But then that's very, very dangerous thing to do unless otherwise you have gained necessary knowledge, experience, and have deep pockets. So one has to be careful. Some of the questions which has come, I was discussing with them, is more revolving around intraday or technical analysis or fundamentals and all. It is essential that to be successful in the market. Most of us, the typical presentation when somebody wants to market capital market to a gullible investor is that they show that if you had invested 10,000 rupees in Wipro stock in 1980, it would have become 500 crores or 600 crores now. Is it a fact? Yes, it is a fact. It would have become. But is it possible? It is possible. Technically, it is possible. But how many of us would have made? So, I mean, let us not go by, for every one successful example of people are making a lot of money in the market, there are 8 or 10 negative examples where people have lost money in scripts like Pentamedia Graphics or Silverline or TSQ Software, which are trading at 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees, and last traded price was 1 rupee, and today it is not at all traded. So it can also, how you can build wealth, you can also ruin or you can destroy wealth. The capital market can destroy wealth if you don't handle it properly. So one has to be very, very careful. You have to set the expectations right, and when you come to the market, you cannot think that everything is rosy, everything is easy, and somebody has made money, so I can also make money. So somebody else who has made money also would have lost a lot of money, and that would have been investment for him to learn things, and he had a deep pocket, then probably would have come out of it. Do we have that kind of a deep pocket? Do we have that kind of a knowledge and time? That's very important. It's not a joke. It's not a part-time job. It's a full-time. If you want to be a trader, if you want to be a jobber, it is a full-time job with a lot of money in hand. And after a few times, falling down and getting up, only probably you should be able to master it reasonably. Even then, there are a lot of people who are not mastered it, because many people think that if we have knowledge about the market, if we know the fundamental analysis, how to read the balance sheet, how to read the annual report, income and expenditure account, or annexure schedules and all, we can earn a lot of money. And I always say that if that is the case, that all the chartered accountants in India would have become crorepati's. There are a set of another people think that we don't need to read all those things. The price, the volume, and the period. These are the 3 parameters needed, and do the technical analysis, and with technical analysis, all of us can make money. Technical analysis will certainly help you to some extent to stop loss, or trailing stop loss, to cut loss, or to for certain safeguard certain measures. But technical analysis is not a foolproof method or this thing for you to make money. There is something else beyond a fundamental analysis and then technical analysis. The third aspect to be successful in the market over a longer period of time is, apart from fundamental analysis, apart from technical analysis, is the behavioral aspect of the market. The herd mindset, how the market behaves in different situations. It's very unpredictable. It's very unpredictable. It is predictable. It is predictable, but still unpredictable. It's a little confusing how people behave in different situations. You take, for example, in the audience today is that after this we'll go for a Q&A session, just another 2-3 minutes probably. The audience today, when you look at it right now in this session, it's a mixed audience. So I will not blame if somebody does not know something, or I will not blame someone who thinks that what I am speaking is very basic, because it is a mixed audience. But look at a classroom where, if you are studying first year college or second year college, and all of you are in the same class, same age group, and you're studying the same syllabus, and the same teacher or a lecturer who comes and takes classes for the same subject. But in spite of all this homogeneity, when the results comes out, there is a wide variation. Now, why is it? It's an individual's capability to understand, to grasp things, and even if you grasp things and understand, it's one's capability to reflect it or put it in writing. You may understand something, you will be able to explain it to someone orally, but you may not be able to put it in writing. You don't have the habit of mugging it up. So what do? So this is the behavioral aspect. Is why is it? Because each one of us are different. Each individuals are different. In spite of we being provided the same input from the same source on the same subject, we all come out with a different output. If you happen to see that, understand one simple experiment is a marshmallow experiment, which is available online. If you go and see that, a lot of videos are there on marshmallow experiment. Why people get tempted and different. I mean, the children are in a room. I mean, I don't want to explain about it, but that one thing will clearly explain that how we behave in different situations. So that's again important, and that's why the subject of behavioral finance or behavioral economics started gaining more importance in the last 1.5 decades or 2 decades. A lot of research are being done, and the last 1 decade, at least 2 people have got Nobel Prize based on their books on or their studies on the behavioral economics and behavioral finance. So I've recommended earlier, one of the meeting also recommended to read Nudge, the book Nudge by Richard Thaler, and the other interesting authors are Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. Couple of other books are Fooled by Randomness is there. That's another book. So these are all the books which gives us a perspective about how we behave. It's because investing is an art of decision making. And it's easy to say that, if you want to learn bicycle, just get on top and then ride. But then when we start ride, we fall. But after a few years of experience, we don't even realize that how we drive that bicycle. That's how the investment. After a few years of experience, you'll really know that what is investment and why market behaves in certain way. And this. So I don't want to take much of a time. I think it will be better that it will be more useful for a different set of audience. So it's better to answer the questions than me doing a monologue. I prefer a dialogue. So we'll go into the Q&A mode.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So one request to everyone is that they don't ask doubts regarding specific stocks. So one question is from Venkatam. He's asking, is 2020 the right time to enter the market as a trader?
Okay. For a trader, any time is a good time to enter. Trader always finds an opportunity in any market. See, that's a basic difference between an investor and a trader. The investor always looks out for an opportunity, waits for an opportunity, waits for the market to come down so that he can buy, and wait for the market to go up, he can sell. So he tries to time the market. Invariably, most of them fail. 80-20 rule applies here. 80% of them fail and 20% of them succeed. Those with a lot of patience and a lot of deep pocket, they succeed. So the investor is a person who looks out for time and timing the market. And I wish, with all this experience of 30 years, I'm able to time the market, but most of us are not able to time the market. But we can tell that we are somewhere closer to the bottom or somewhere closer to the top. That is possible, but it's very difficult to find out the bottom or this thing, peak. But as far as a trader is concerned, a trader finds opportunity in any market. What does a trader need? A trader simply needs a volatility in the market. As long as volatility is there in the market with enough liquidity, he can always trade in the market, because an investor takes a direction in the market. He normally buys, and then after buying, after a long time or short term, whatever it is, he sells. So he is directional. He can go only in one direction, whereas trader can travel in both directions. He can buy, he can as well as sell also. He can go short in derivatives or futures or options. He can sell. So he can benefit from a falling market as well as a rising market. That's the basic difference. So for a trader, what he needs is volatility, and of course there is volatility in the market today, in overall market as well as in the index as well as in the individual stocks. So there are opportunities for a trader, but as I said, it's not a cakewalk. One has to be very careful, and with a strict stop loss and with a trial for a few times, I think you should gain. And more than analyzing the market, I would always say that more analyze yourself, how you behaved in different circumstances, and are you capable of handling this kind of emotional volatility, and then become a trader. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Faizi first. He's asking, can can pharma sector boom in the next 3 years?
Okay. See, post-COVID, now everybody have started looking at pharma. The basic reason which most of the pharma stocks have gone up by 20-30% or even 40%, some of them. Somehow, I'm not very comfortable when something is hot. When something is hot, you get hurt. I was suggesting pharma stocks, pharma sector, mutual funds, and also IT funds or technology funds last year, but not anymore. It does not mean that they may not go up. They may still go up. They have a lot of potential to go up. Many people say that this is only the beginning, but I'm not comfortable with the valuations because I feel that most of the pharma stocks are fully priced. But the beauty of the market is that the stocks never trade at the fully priced level for a longer period of time. Either they are underpriced or overpriced. So they were underpriced last year. Now they are fully priced, and I expect a time where they will become overpriced, maybe in 6 months' time or 1 year time. I don't know. Time is very difficult to predict, but then it will become overpriced, and that's a time for anyone to look at exit from pharma stocks than holding on to it. Of course, it is a good hedge against long-term investors for them to hold on to most of the pharma stocks and this thing. And I have this normal contrarian view as far as pharma stocks are concerned. Whenever US FDA comes out with a negative ruling against a particular company, the stock falls. After 2-3 days, the same stock which was available at a very high PE at a high price is available at a reasonably lower price. And that is the time to look at the price, because invariably most of these pharma stocks correct themselves and come out with, they pass the US FDA, and then the price goes up back to the old level or even better than that level. This has happened in many stocks. You can look at Wockhardt or I don't want to mention any individual stocks, but many stocks, if you look at it, they have provided entry opportunities. So I'll be a little bit contrarian in many overall market as well as particularly pharma. For a trader, pharma stocks are going to provide tremendous opportunities going forward.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Vaidyanathan, Mr. Vaidyanathan. He's asking if you can explain few important SEBI guidelines which has been released recently and how it will affect the investors.
I think, is he asking about margining system?
I'm not sure. Mr. Vaidyanathan, if you can come on mic and ask it out.
Yes, sir, I'm asking about it. Margin.
Yeah, okay. The new margining system brought in by SEBI, the stock exchanges have implemented it. It basically means that what they already have in derivatives, they have implemented it in cash market also. Okay. In derivatives, the individual clients or the investor who want to trade in that particular derivative should provide the margin in advance, whatever margin as per the SEBI stock exchange requirement to cover the risk, they have to provide the margin in advance. As far as cash market is concerned, now they have brought that regulation that every investor who want to trade in or invest in cash market, they have to provide enough margin in advance. Now, somebody who wants to buy 1 lakh worth of stock today, he should have the required margin in advance in his account with the stockbroker. The margin varies from company to company. A good quality company which forms a part of Nifty, the margin will be normally 15%, 20%, 25% or 30%. Whereas there are other companies, big group companies, the margin could be 40%, 50% or 60%. There are some companies which are coming under trade for trade or trade to trade, you call it T2T. Those companies are called high risk companies, and in order to protect the investors, the margin requirement is 100%. If you want to buy for 1 lakh, you have to provide the 1 lakh in advance. And there are another set of companies which comes under ASM, GSM, other surveillance measures, where the margin money you pay should be 200%. You want to buy for 1 lakh, but you have to pay 2 lakh. and that money will not be released in the near future. It will be released after a few months. So these are all the things which the GSM ASM was there already. The margining system for the cash market is brought in now. Now, suppose for 1 lakh you want to buy, if it is a group stock, maybe, if it is a Nifty stock, maybe 25%, 30%, 25,000 or 30,000 you should have. And next day you have to pay the mark-to-market margin, and T+2, the trading plus second day the delivery happens, you have to provide the full amount by morning before 10th, the settlement time. Okay, this is the procedure. This is fine. Now you want to sell the stock. You want to buy the stock, you have to provide margin. Now why margin should be provided? The basic reason to provide the margin is that you bought a stock for 1 lakh and without paying any margin, the stock falls to 70,000. And the next day or the third day, if the client does not pay, the market is at risk to the extent of 30,000. Who will pay this 30,000? Somebody has bought it from you at 1 lakh. You have sold it. Okay. So, you bought it. Somebody has sold it to you. And if you don't pay the margin, what will happen? The 30,000 is a loss to the fellow who sold it. Right? So, in order to protect his interest, they collect this margin when you are buying. You buy it and you don't take delivery, the 30,000 will go to that seller. And now he can sell at 70,000 rupees in the market. 30,000 you have paid already, so 1 lakh is made up. So this is why the margin is collected. The margin is collected, I'm just simplifying it. The margin is collected to protect the market, protect the system, protect the buyer and seller, protect the participant. Now why margin is collected when you are going to sell the stock? Okay, there is a reason. If I am selling the stock worth 1 lakh, and if I don't deliver the stock because the stock price has gone up to 1.25 lakhs next day, I want to sell it at 1.25 lakhs, so I don't want to deliver this stock. What will happen? The fellow has bought from me, the buyer will demand delivery, and the broker, the buyer broker representing him has to give the delivery, exchange has to arrange the delivery. If I don't deliver the stocks, they will buy it at 1.25 lakhs from the market and deliver it to him. There is a loss of 25 lakhs, but the buyer will pay only 1 lakh. 25,000 rupees is a loss to the exchange, loss to the broker. Any one of them has to bear it. Why should they bear it? So they take it from the seller. So they ask the seller to pay the margin and sell, even for selling. After you deliver the stocks and T+2 day, when they return that 1 lakh, they will also return that 25,000 margin. This is second part. Now, there is the third part. When you are selling, you don't want to pay margin. There is one methodology. If you have your demat account with the same broker with whom you are selling, you can ask him to take the stocks for early pay-in. So when he takes it for early pay-in, the stocks are already taken from your demat account, so there is no risk to the stock exchange system. So you will be allowed to sell without paying margin. But when you want to buy again against that credit, you are supposed to pay margin. This is the system as well. This is the basic margining system they have brought in order to protect the investors, protect the system. There are different views on this, that why should they micromanage, or is it not enough if the broker pays the margin and he manages within the his clients how he does it is his problem. So there are different views and in both sides talk about what is right and wrong. I don't want to comment upon it, but this is the basic margining system which they have brought in now.
Thanks for explaining it very clear, sir. I have one more doubt. If the margin is maintained for T+2 days, is it fine, or we should maintain still for some more long time, sir? If the shares have been purchased by another person who is willing to buy our shares when we sell, up to that day, if we maintain the margin, is it sufficient, or we should still maintain it, sir?
No, T+2 days is enough. Second day they will return the margin along with your payout. Whatever you have sold, the payout is there. Along with that, they will return your money or margin also. Yeah.
That makes sense. Like when we are buying, we should have that margin with in our demat account. That's fine. Then after that, we can purchase some other shares.
Yeah. Trading account. You should have the credit in your trading account when you want to buy. When you want to sell, you should have the share in your demat account and give it for early paying through your broker.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Sharan Raj. He is asking which is optimal, intraday or cash and carry?
No, like I said, that I think it's one's individual attitude. There cannot be one parameter for everyone. Intraday has got its own limitations and its own advantages too. Because whatever you do, good or bad, it ends with the same day. You don't carry anything next day. You come afresh. but at the same time that sometimes you may be forced to book a loss unnecessarily. So it depends upon the market situation, and we cannot decide whether it is what it is. The market moves in a different direction, so it is up to you. But then, like I said, that your capability to understand the market, analyze the market, the inputs what you get, and your experience and expertise, and then how deep your pockets are. These are all the things which decide whether what suits you, whether intraday or swing trading or long-term investment, what suits your specific investment, because we are all brought up in a different environment. There is a set of people who are brought up saying that stock market is very risky. There are some of us who are told that never put even 1 rupee into fixed deposit, which is very risky. So many of you may laugh at it that why a fixed deposit is very risky, because I was brought up in a situation where I was told that fixed deposit will make you from middle class to lower middle class. You want to become from middle class to upper middle class, you have to trade in stocks. So you are taking a bigger risk by putting all your money into fixed deposit. Now, can I recommend it to you? No. It depends upon each one's mindset, the way they were brought up from childhood, how your capability to take risk, understand risk. So intraday or swing trade or carry forward, whatever it is, I think you have to explore your own style with some minimal amount of money and then find out and identify yourself. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Next question is from Mr. Krishna. He's asking if a market correction is due soon, as the economy still hasn't recovered much.
Okay. See, I may be wrong, but again, with that, the thing I'm saying, somehow I was not very comfortable the entire 2019. I was actually, advising many of my friends and relatives and investors and clients to actually sell, get out, and be in cash. And COVID came and the market crashed. I don't know without COVID what would have happened, but I feel that even without COVID, market would have come down because economy was not doing well. Okay. But then it was only that fall was only for about a week or 10 days or maximum about a month. Market has started again going up. Okay. Probably market overreacted on March 23rd, that one particular week. So it has started correcting and it is coming to a level where the PE is very fair. But then from there again, the PE has come back to almost the old level, touching almost an all-time high. So right now, I'm not very comfortable with the market trading at such high levels without being supported by fundamentals. I'm not saying the fundamentals are very bad, but fundamentals are certainly not all this great for the market to celebrate with such high PE, for the Nifty or Sensex to trade at such high PEs. So I feel that there could be a correction in the market, and there should be a correction in the market for the market to be hale and healthy. Otherwise, I think as it goes up and more, high peak, the fall could be worse and pretty bad and affect more people. There are a lot of people who have come into the market in the recent past, in US, they call them Robinhood investors, because of the excess liquidity pumped in by the governments and central banks into the market, which are meant for, not into the market, into the hands of the people for different purposes, into the hands of the business for different purposes, but being directed wrongly into the market. And because of that excess liquidity, markets are going up. Once the liquidity starts drying up, I'm sure that the market will correct it and water will find its level. So if you ask me that whether I'm investing, hardly a few stocks. Most of it I'm avoiding or booking profits at every rise and being in cash to a larger extent. I may be wrong. Again, I think timing the market is not a good strategy, but based on my experience, I don't want to jump in when such high valuations. I don't mind waiting and losing an opportunity. We call it fear of missing out, FOMO. This is a FOMO market. Many people feel that, have the fear of missing out and they are jumping into the market. I don't want to jump into the market when everyone is jumping in. I want to actually jump out of the market. That's what I would say.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Mr. Guhan. He says he's 19 and he's asking if it's the right age to invest in stock market by having the knowledge of analyzing the balance sheet.
Yeah, I think my son started his investment journey when he was in school. So I don't think there is any age limit for investing. You can start investing at any point of time. Of course, to enter into a contract and all legally, you need there are certain requirements. So you're 19, you can invest. But only suggestion from my side will be that you have to read a lot. and you have to listen a lot to people who are already investing in the market. A lot of interesting videos are available on YouTube. You keep watching them, at least 1 or 2 videos a day, and keep reading a lot of books. Most of the books are available online. You can read them. In English, it is available. In Tamil, it is available. In most of the languages, it is available. Quite a lot of books. And you can also start tracking many people, many interesting investment analysts are there on Twitter. Start tracking them, their investment style, and learn a lot. This is the first prerequisite, because if you're going to cut a tree, you have to sharpen the axe. If you need 6 hours to cut the tree, 4 hours or 5 hours is needed to sharpen the axe. This is what Charlie Munger said once. Cutting the tree takes hardly half an hour or 1 hour, but then sharpening the axe takes 5 hours. So you have to sharpen your mind, sharpen your brains, you have to sharpen your thinking process. That's very important. For that, you have to read a lot, listen a lot, watch a lot online content or television channels, business channels. You have to watch, understand how business is done, how businesses are done. It's not you're buying a stock at 100 rupees, goes to 150, selling and 15. You're buying a business, you're putting your mind and soul into a business and trying to be a part of that business. I think that is something very, very important. And 19 is not too early. I would say that you can start investing, but be careful. Try to invest the money which you can afford to lose. This is very important. At this age, don't put all your money into the market, all your savings, even if it is, let it be 500 rupees, 1000 rupees. Just invest that a little bit of that money and learn how the systems are functioning. And then after a couple of years, then you can go full swing into the market. Couple of years, it takes a couple of years. It's not few months or few weeks or few days. Don't think that just because you have made some money in a month or 2 months, then you have mastered the market. There are people who have, you can say that you've reasonably mastered the market or understood the market, at least only if you have seen 2 bull runs and 2 bear runs, and which will take about 8 to 12 years. And after that, you can say that, okay, I've reasonably understood. Even then, you cannot say that I've made money, but you can at least say that I've understood the market. So be careful with your money. Yeah. But without trading, without actually trading, and you can never learn, only by reading and only by watching. So trade with some small amount and you'll understand. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Next question is by Valli. She's asking if it is always necessary to select a security by using statistical techniques.
What kind of statistical techniques? Does she mean technical analysis or fundamental analysis?
Yes, sir. Both of it, sir.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's again. I would say that you should choose a style which suits you. If you're looking at as a long-term investor, you always have to look at fundamentals of the company. Read the annual report. You can learn a lot from the annual report, which many people are ignoring. They say that be like Sherlock Holmes. Look at what others are missing. You can make money only by looking at what others are missing out and what is visible to your eyes. That's where many people miss out many things, and that's where the opportunity is there to make money. So reading annual report is a starting point, but it does not end there. Like I said, if reading annual report is a only tool, then everybody who is capable of reading annual report can make money. It is not there. Then you can look at the price movement. For technical analysis, people who enter into as a trader into the market, looking at the technical and using the technical analysis and analytical tools, they don't need to look at the fundamentals. They simply need the 3 data, the price movement of that particular commodity or a stock or currency. It can be anything. The price movement over a long period of time, 6 months or 3 months or 2 months or 5 minutes or whatever period you are planning to trade. The price movement, the volume, whether there is enough liquidity, the volume data, and then the time period. These are the 3 data needed for someone who understands technical analysis. They don't even need the name of the stock. They don't even need the name of the commodity. They don't even need the name of that, whether it is a currency or a commodity. What they need is simply this time period. Within this time period, this is the price movement, volatility, and this is the volume trader. If this data is given, they will be able to take a call on what is the stop loss, what is the resistance, support, all these things, and they will be able to do a trade. But again, that's not a short way of making money, but that is at least to protect your capital and safeguard your capital. That gives a lot of things. So it's a little intricate thing. A lot of other various factors are there. So you have to look at, if you're a trader, look at technical analysis. If you are an investor, you can use fundamentals to choose a stock. And if you're looking at timing the market, probably it's very difficult, but you can use technical analysis to some extent. I would say it's a combination. And then the third part, as I said earlier, is behavioral aspect. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Vedyanathan has asked one more question. He's asking if is trading in share market like gambling, as many people say? Comment on your views, sir.
Okay. See, there is the common example. What we give is the knife you have at home. You can cut vegetables or you can kill people. So it's all depends upon how you use it. If you know how to use it as a productive tool, you can make money, or it can destroy you. There are people who have bought stocks like Wipro or Infosys or Divi's Lab or Dr. Reddy's Laboratories or stocks like that, and sat on it for decades together and made millions and billions of money. There are people who have bought stocks like Mazda Industry or Pentamedia or DSQ at 1,500 rupees and 2,500 rupees, which became zero and lost a lot of money, tons of money. So it can be used as a gambling tool. It can be used as for productive purpose. It can be used for wealth creation. It can be used for capital formation. So that the basic purpose of the capital market, as I said earlier, it is basically for capital formation, for the industrialization of a country, and for job creation, and incidentally, it provides return to investors. That's how I look at it personally.
Yes, thank you, sir. There is this question from Ram Sundaram. He is asked about some of the media houses and trading firm recos seem to have a bias of some kind based on multiple factors. Could you suggest platforms which could give reasonable and neutral information and articles?
See, the only place where you can find unbiased information will be, it is very important to look at unbiased information, particularly if you are researching something, if you are a student or
Guys, kindly wait. I guess there is a technical glitch. Please wait for some time. We'll rectify it. Guys, kindly wait. I guess there is some network problem.
you're able to hear me? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're back.
Yeah, sorry, that was a technical issue. Okay. You're able to hear me, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible.
Yeah, okay. So, so if you want to look at unbiased information, the primary source of information is the website of the company. Under the investor relations, they would have published the annual report, quarterly report, everything. The other place will be the stock exchanges, where they file each and everything. Whenever there is a change in directors, when the board composition, or the quarterly results, or half-yearly results, or expansion plans, or approvals, rights issue, bonus, dividend, everything, they declare immediately to the stock exchanges. So the websites of the stock exchanges have all the details. You'll be amazed to see the kind of the information available in the website of NSE and BSE about various companies for the past so many years. And then SEBI's website. These are the places where you will find authentic information. The only challenge there will be that in all these places, the kind of the information they will be provided will be raw data. Raw data in its raw format, not in the format which you like, or not in an interesting format where you look at it. So therefore, you are forced to look at other places which are run by the so-called, the people who rightly mentioned, the biased people. Nothing wrong in looking at them, and for the same company, for the same quarter, each one of them will be publishing different this thing. So take a look at that, but you come to a conclusion. But basically, I would suggest to look at the website of NSE, BSE, SEBI, and the website of the respective companies which you want to invest. These are the places where you will get unbiased information.
Thank you, sir. Another question by Mr. Krishna. He's asking if you can suggest if you would suggest following Charlie Munger's method of not diversifying your portfolio too much.
Diversification generally we recommend for a common investor, for an average investor who is working somewhere full time, or who has got a business, who don't have time to concentrate much, or who cannot spend a lot of time on his portfolio. We generally tell him to diversify his portfolio, and so that he de-risk himself from the vagaries of the volatility of one particular stock. Because if you put all your money into one stock, if that stock fails, if that company fails, all your money is gone, right? So we say that, even if that goes, there is another company where you have invested will help you, and your portfolio overall will be doing very well. That's how a portfolio is designed normally. But if you are very experienced, and if you are very knowledgeable, and if you have a lot of time and deep pockets, there is nothing wrong in reducing the diversification and focusing on a few stocks. But again, I would not recommend investing in only in one stock, but probably you should have a portfolio of 4 or 5 stocks in different sector, at least, bare minimum. But too much of diversification of 30, 40 stocks, many of those investors in 90s, if you look at them, some of them have 100 stocks, 50 stocks. It's too much of waste of time, and even if any one of the stock goes up also, they're not going to gain much. So that's a problem of having too much of diversification. So ideally, you should know how to strike a right kind of a balance between too much of diversification and the less diversification, because less diversification leads you to concentration risk. Concentration risk is equally dangerous like a over diversification. So you should be able to find a right kind of a balance between that. Yeah. In my opinion, I would say that you should restrict it to anywhere between 5 to 8 stocks, or maybe 10 stocks, not more than that.
Thank you, sir. The last question for the day is from Mr. Venkat. He's asking, value investing is not applicable in recent years because single company is doing different business like Amazon and Reliance, etc. What do you think about value investing in recent?
See, value investing is nothing. Concept, people start talking a lot about it in the last 10 years, but then I don't want to get into those jargons and confuse all of us. I think what we are looking at is that a potential opportunity in a stock, when there is an aberration between its intrinsic value, the real value or the real potential of it earning much higher return, and the market price. When there is a gap between the common opinion of everyone and the real value of the stock, when there is a difference, then that is where the opportunity lies, and we try to identify that opportunity where there is a gap exists between its real value, its intrinsic value, a potential value, and the actual price in which it is traded. Because the price, there is not much of a sanctity to it. Let's respect it because it's an opinion, but it is only an opinion. It is like a voting machine where people voted in favor of it. It does not mean that they are the right party. Okay, they are the right rulers. So it is an opinion expressed. The opinion could be wrong, but then the intrinsic value could never go wrong. Okay, most of the time market fails to look at the intrinsic value, and I think value investing will be here to stay forever, and people will, with a reasonably long-term view, will continue to make money in value investing. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much. I guess we can end our session. I would like to thank Mr. Nagappan for taking his valuable time and taking a webinar
on stock marketing. Thank you so much, sir. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. So yeah, so we'll end our session. If you have any feedbacks, you can fill the Google form which is available in the chat box. So yeah, I guess we can end it. So anything else you want to add?
No, I would, no, I really appreciate Swap and Cup for doing this kind of a program, and I wish that you do it on a regular basis with other people. I mentioned about Arunachalam, who is a very experienced person with more than 2 decades of experience in the capital market. He will be able to handle he's from my office. He can handle any more sessions like this, because unfortunately I will not be able to handle this on a regular basis. So if you need, he'll be able to handle this. And from our Foundation for Financial Freedom, we'll be able to do many such programs whenever needed. I wish you happy investing, and if there are any queries, you can mail your queries to Swap, and they will be directing it to me, and I'll be very happy to answer all those queries. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah, so that's it. That's it, people. Thank you so much for attending. I hope you had a wonderful session today. So keep learning and have a great day. Thank you. Thank you, sir.